Hey, good morning, church family. So I'm in Austin, Texas right now. I just spent the weekend with my family, my mom and her husband, and a lot of family and friends celebrating an early birthday for me. My mom wanted to throw a party, and we did. We had a good day swimming in the pool, cooking up some Cajun jambalaya. Had friends come in from Louisiana, so they brought a bit of, and one of my best friends, since I've known since second grade, drive over with his family and spend the weekend with us. And it was just wonderful. We enjoyed good time together, good food, and good fellowship. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm over here at my mom's house is right behind her house is a big green belt. And actually, you can see it behind me. This is just one of the paths out here of many that climb different hills and go down to the edge of the water, or when there was water in Lake Travis. But it's pretty dry right now. But I have spent many years coming down here and walking and running. And there's all kinds of paths you can take down here. In fact, I've gotten lost many a times when it was my first time exploring these trails down here as a young high school boy running cross country and training and that kind of thing. But we've seen a ton of people out here this morning. It's peaceful. It's enjoyable. So I thought, man, this would be a great place to spend a little time with you guys looking at our passage this week. So we're going to continue in John chapter 15. And man, John 15 is so rich. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it all the way through yet, but I encourage you, read all of 15. We're breaking it down into segments. Last week we went over verses 1 through 8, and this week for House Church we're going to be in verses 9 through 17. And even that segment is so rich. And so for our time this morning, in the short minutes that we have, I'm going to even break down the second part of our passage for this week because there's just too much to cover in all of it. So I'm going to read a little bit, and then we're going to talk about it some. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to John chapter 15, and we're going to begin in verse 9. Excuse me. For this morning, we're going to begin in verse 12. So psych about verse 9. Verse 12. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, He may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. There's no secret that one of the major themes in this passage, and particularly all the New Testament and the Bible, is love. And Jesus is really driving home that theme to his disciples on his last night on earth. A little bit of context just to remember, Jesus and his disciples are spending their last moments together, huddled up. And Jesus is doing everything he can from the bottom of his heart and all of his flesh to prepare his disciples for what's going to happen next. And one of my favorite lines in this short passage, it's all good. Don't get me wrong. It's so good. But in verse 16, you can almost sense that Jesus would be looking in the eyes of these boys that he's journeyed with for the past 3 years. And he would be reminding them, you didn't choose me. I chose you. Think about that for a moment. It's got to take them back in their minds when they were on the edge of the water and they were getting their boats ready, and they were probably mending their nets, and they were about to venture off for a day in their career of being fishermen. A lot of them were fishermen. And it was on that day, about 3 years ago, that Jesus sees them. He sees them when they didn't recognize him. Maybe they had heard of him, but Jesus calls them out and says, boys, if you follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. So fast forward 3 years later, and it's almost as if Jesus is reminding them on that day, Hey, remember, you didn't choose me. I found you when you were in that place that you weren't quite sure what you were going to do with your life. Or you were stuck in your old ways and you were just going through the motions. Does that sound familiar, church? Can you think back to that time that Jesus saw you? When maybe you were stuck in your old ways, that you were going through the motions, and he called you up out of something and into something so great, into something so beautiful, that we can scarcely believe it. But it's for all of eternity that we get to walk with him, talk with him, and enjoy the company of our Jesus. And Jesus is reminding his boys that day, I'm calling you up into something greater. He definitely doesn't want them to go back to the old ways, because he has set them on a path that he has chosen and appointed for them to walk out and build the early church. And he is doing everything he can to prepare them for a life without him in the flesh, but with them in the spirit. And so when he says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go. I mean, there's an action there. He's going to leave them in a short few hours, but he needs them to go and continue the mission. You know, church, we may have already decided to walk with Jesus, but there's times that we get on this path, and sometimes it becomes an old familiar path, and we can get stagnant. Or we find ourselves kind of walking back and forth, not knowing which path we should take to get out of here. You know, I'm going to have to traverse out of here in a moment. And as I walk down this path, there's several different Y points that I can choose from. And quite a few of them lead back to the top where I'm going. And quite a few of them lead a different direction. I'm going to have to stop at a few of those and kind of collect myself and remember how it was that I got down here so that I can get back up. Jesus has left a pathway for his boys, a pathway of love, a pathway of righteousness to follow, and it is the same for us. I love one of my favorite Psalms, and verse 139 really drives this home, and maybe it will for you too. Let me read it to you. Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Church, no matter what path you're on today, I remind you that the Lord has chosen you and appointed you and set you on that path, but not to remain stagnant, but to go and bear fruit, to go and put into action all the things that we've heard from him in his word and through his spirit and through the church body collectively that speaks life. Church, receive his instruction today, not out of a place of do this or else, but do this so you can abide in my Father's love, just as Jesus has abided in his Father's love. Church, I love you, and I pray that you see yourself as one that's been called up into a mission greater than ourselves, greater than yourself. And if you need a little bit of encouragement this morning, though this path is beautiful and it's great, the point of it is not to stay put, but to continue moving. Continue going, abiding, and bearing fruit that will bring the Father glory. Church, I love you, and I look forward to how this passage is going to speak to you in ways that maybe will continue to enlighten your fellow brothers and sisters this week. Take care. Talk soon.